Peter, thank you very much indeed, and I am delighted to be back in Wales. I'm always delighted to be back in Wales, not least because of the opportunity to listen to incredibly eloquent and moving speakers, and thank you, Michael. That was a wonderful talk. Wonderful talk. I'm here to reassure you that by 2050, we will have created this amazing, fair, compassionate, sustainable world that every single person here, and I suspect when given half a chance, every single person across the length and breadth of this country hopes will be what our future looks like. Because it may surprise you to know that there aren't actually that many people who get out of bed every morning with the explicit intention of trashing the prospects of life on Earth so that all future generations have an utterly miserable time of it. Not that many people. I've met a few in my life. I'm sure you've met some too along the way. Difficult to avoid sometimes, but by and large, we all still feel that sense of obligation, whether it's captured in formal legal conventions through the UN or captured in our own heartfelt sense of obligation to our own children, grandchildren, our communities, and so on. We all have that sense that we need to do a good job, not just for ourselves today, but for all future generations. And that, of course, is the heart of sustainable development. I have been doing sustainable development for a very long time, 40 years in fact, and 4 years ago, I suddenly came to the conclusion that I hadn't really checked in on whether or not a genuinely fair, sustainable future was still available to us. I imagine some of you have the depressing experience of reading quite a lot in the media about how it is already too late to deliver this good world for people by 2050. That these converging crises, accelerating climate change, biodiversity extinctions, resource shortages, collapsing ecosystem services, the whole litany of the terrible consequences of our abuse of the natural world, I'm surrounded by people who tell me that that is so awful, an accumulated consequence that we're not going to be able to do this sustainable world by 2050. I call them the too late brigade. They're quite depressing. Because every time you hear them, and they are often fearsomely eloquent as well, you sort of think, okay, you may be right. I'm not quite sure what that does for me as an advocate for change, as a social entrepreneur, as a parent, as whatever it might be. How do you get up from that and go out and make this better world possible? I felt as a consequence of that, I ought to go and spend some time researching what it is that is going to make this world available to us. And I spent 2 years looking into every single field of human endeavor that will produce the combination of new technology and new systems, economic, political, social, ethical systems, to make this dream possible. Now, for me, that sounds probably to many of you a bit obvious, but actually I've never been a terribly enthusiastic exponent of technology. I find technology, if I'm being absolutely honest, just a bit boring most of the time. I don't enthuse about cars. I honestly find IT largely unworkable. My life sort of continues despite all those problems I have with technology. So it's never been a big part of my life. Imagine the revelation when you suddenly dive into this world of utterly brilliant innovators all over the world who spend every single minute of their waking lives seeking to bring forward technological solutions to the problems we face today. It is impossible to give you a full account of just how vast and superabundant that innovation world looks like. Every single area that you want to think about from a sustainability perspective is populated by utterly brilliant people and utterly brilliant organizations trying to make those solutions happen. And yet most of our debate about sustainability is still cast in this incredibly narrow sense of what is or isn't possible. You think about how people talk about energy for the future. Just try stepping outside the tram lines that we've got used to of an energy world based entirely on fossil fuels and nuclear power, with a little bit of renewables added on for whatever purposes it may be. Most people cannot think outside of those tram lines. If you really open up to the power of innovation in renewable energy, in energy efficiency, in storage, in new smart grids, this world could be swept away really quite quickly. So in 2050, in the world we made, because we did make it, it's a success story. It is a story, Michael. You're right. We have to tell this through the medium of stories, because that's what makes people really respond to this opportunity. In 2050, we made that world. And right at the heart of that world is this energy revolution. As we exit the world of fossil fuels that is causing us such a problem today, and move through to a world of solar energy, essentially of renewable power. 90% of the energy we use in 2050, with 9 billion people on this planet, remember, 2 billion more than we have today, making everything just a little bit harder, let's be honest. 9 billion people, 90% of the energy we use in 2050 comes from renewable energy sources. We've ceased to use coal almost entirely, apart from in India, which is still hanging on to a couple of old coal-fired clunkers. We've pretty much eliminated nuclear because we woke up to the fact that's not a brilliant option either. We stopped using oil in almost all purposes. Gas is still around a bit, but on a declining trajectory. 30% of the electricity we use comes from solar power alone. Now, you may say, Jonathan's just been spending too much time staring into these projections about what energy sources can bring us for the future. That wasn't what excited me. I spent a huge amount of time talking to people who work for organizations like the Fraunhofer Solar Institute. These are quite downbeat German engineers, largely. They don't do this kind of big shtick that I'm doing with you today. They talk very modestly about what's going to happen with their cherished breakthrough technologies on photovoltaics, on concentrated solar power, on thin film, whatever it might be. And when you really look at that innovation pipeline for the next 10 to 15 years, it is utterly astonishing. Utterly astonishing. But most of our politicians and most of our godforsaken media are still stuck in a prison. Their mindset will not allow them to see what this world really looks like. So on that score, honestly, kids, ladies and gentlemen, celebrate. The combined power of human genius with enough grit and determination from society to make it happen will provide the technology base for a sustainable world for 9 billion people by 2050. Now, I've been saying that throughout my life, but I never really bothered to find out whether it was true. I know it to be true now. I've seen what this looks like. But I can't quite end there. It's not just about technology. That technology will only serve the needs of humankind in the way that we need it to if our governance systems and our commitment to justice, to equity, to democracy, empower and inform that technology rollout. I think that was so important when we heard from the minister to keep reminding people that sustainable development is driven by two imperatives, not just the imperative of biophysical sustainability, living in an acceptable way with the constraints and the limits of nature, but it's driven by social justice as well. And there are many technology enthusiasts who don't want to talk to you about social justice. The power of sustainable development is it combines both of those two things together. That's why Wales is so important. It would be impossible for Wales to do sustainable development based purely on a concern about the physical environment if it wasn't utterly driven by this commitment to a fairer world. It wouldn't be true to the culture, the traditions, and the history of Wales. When I was chair of the Sustainable Development Commission, that was always a crucial part of the work we felt we were able to do here in Wales. It was always part of the leadership that Wales showed at that time, and it's part of the leadership that Wales shows today. Because, as you will all know, sustainable development has been pretty much rooted out of any aspect of political life in Whitehall. I know not why, but that combination of neoliberal conservatives and slightly misguided Lib Dems decided that sustainable development somehow wasn't part of their brave new world. God help them. Now, I suspect, post the floods, we've suddenly heard a few people waking up to the realities of what this all looks like. Here in Wales, that commitment never went away. Peter Davies, as far as I know, is the sole remaining human presence representing the Sustainable Development Commission. What a survivor. So far as I know, this bill that is coming forward now, the Future Generations Bill, is not only unique in the UK. Can you imagine the Prime Minister, George Osborne, or anybody else standing up and saying, we think it's a critical time now to commit a key part of our legislative programme to a Future Generations Bill? Can you imagine that? It's unthinkable. So not only is it unique in the UK, but so far as I know, Minister, this is something that is pretty special anywhere in the world today. To commit to a statutory process, to reflect those rights and interests, as Michael put it, of the next generation. Inspiring. The fact that it's doable, that such a future is still available to us, should make us all work that much harder to ensure that it does happen. So great to be here today. Start of a conversation where we start to tell our stories. Only just two things to end with. It doesn't happen by chance, this sustainable future. It happens because people dig in with unbelievable determination, courage, persistence, creativity, imagination to make it happen. That's what works. And much of that leadership comes from the usual suspects, if you like, from civil society organizations, from organizations that you don't hear so much about on sustainable development issues, including the business community, who are often taking a lead in this world today, and spiritual and religious communities. But most importantly, the leadership starts to come from young people themselves. Do not forget, this isn't just a conversation we dump on young people. This is a conversation that is more about their future than it is about our future. And in 2018, I know this for a fact, obviously, in 2018, young people all around the world basically rise up, apart from in Wales where they've sorted it out anyway, rise up and say, that's it, you lot. You've missed your chance. You failed to take advantage of the brilliant scientific knowledge we had. You failed to take advantage of the brilliant technologies we had available to us. You failed to do right by us as the next generation. You did not live up to your increasingly vacuous promises to create a more sustainable world for us as well as yourselves. You did none of that stuff. You got jolly good at talking about it, but you were frankly, utterly rubbish at delivering it. And in 2018, all around the world, we have this mass uprising of young people that basically say, move aside. Not very far away, really, just a few years. My hope is that the things going on in Wales here today will actually avoid the need for revolution and make it happen, because we all share this sense of common purpose to deliver that better world anyway. Thank you.